Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, So Grow Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of So Grow Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together, we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. I am very excited to have Kathy Archer on the podcast today. I have been following her on social media, which I always say it's not creepy these days, but we have connected and stayed in touch and just gotten to know each other and each other's work. And so I know that she has written books. She's also writing a new book, and she's also a leadership development coach. She is an expert in women's leadership and personal development and has dedicated her career to helping women discover their true leadership potential by mastering their inner guidance system and building the confidence needed to thrive beyond survival mode. So before we get into the insights and strategies, I want to welcome you to the podcast, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Haley. I've been following your podcast and not creeping you out on social media, but enjoying the insights that you share and the ideas that you generate and your passion. Like, I love how much energy you bring. So it's good to connect this way.
Thank you. I'm very excited for this conversation. So I know that you spent 20 something years in the nonprofit sector and then transitioned to leadership coach. So can you talk a little bit about your experience in working nonprofits, what got you into it, and then what got you into the work and the design that you offer women in leadership now?
Yeah. Do you want the short version or the long version?
Whatever flows.
So I started my career in the nonprofit sector. I started in child and youth care, so group home work, and then transitioned into family support work and disability work, and sort of moved very quickly into leadership positions in the area of the province in Canada where I am. When I started, there wasn't a lot of people who were trained or educated. So that bit of education got me ahead and I moved forward. So I moved into leadership positions and was supervising a smaller group of leaders. And things kind of went sideways. They brought the union in and they weren't very happy. I was young and inexperienced. The education wasn't necessarily helping me that I had in terms of leadership. And so when things fell apart, then there was a big, do I really want to do this? And I very vividly remember It was Christmas time, and I had put on a staff Christmas party, and one person showed up. And so I went home that Christmas and, devastated and like, do I really want to do this? And I went to see my doctor, and he put me on antidepressants. And I decided to come back because I was like, this is where my heart is. I really want to do this. So I came back. I started my degree. It took me 8 years. I was raising 4 kids, and my husband was working away from home, but I was doing it. So I worked in my degree. I started to learn, and I started to grow, and I started to do a lot of inner self-development work, reading stuff like Cheryl Richardson and Wayne Dyer, and trying to kind of get a sense of who am I and, what's my impact in the world. And things started to shift in our team, and we started to get really stronger, and we grew and we expanded. And then I got this really big contract, and then we expanded really big too fast. And it knocked the wind out of me. It was too much. And I started to slip, and I started to not do what I said I would do. And my staff said I was lacking integrity, and things went really sideways. And that's when I got introduced to coaching. And coaching really shifted things for me. And I knew then that it was like, this is what I want to do. I was working with the people, the families, but I knew if I could actually work with the leaders and develop the leaders, that I could make a bigger difference in the sector. So yeah, I went and got the rest of my coach training and then moved out on my own. And I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm sure that people that are listening can relate. And this idea that we are thrust into leadership positions without much support or education on how to do the work. And it can feel really lonely at the top, or just doing this work in general can feel really lonely. So thank you for sharing that story so that people hopefully, listening feel a little bit less alone in their own experience. And you talked about coaching. Can you define coaching a little bit more and like what that actually means? Because I think sometimes, obviously, it's very valuable, and I think everyone should invest in a leadership coach. I have them in my own life, but I think the concept gets a little misconstrued. So can you define what a coach is?
Sure. Let me define what teaching, coaching, and mentoring is, because that probably will help. Teaching is I have some information, I'm going to give it to you, right? Like, teacher at the front of the room, here's what you need to learn. Mentor is often, this is the experience I've had, and it might help you. So for women in leadership, this is how I've felt more comfortable sitting at the table with a group of men in suits, right? So you're taking your own experience and you're imparting that wisdom on somebody else. That's mentoring. Coaching is, this person is already whole. They're not broken. They don't need fixed. They have a wonderful, depth of wisdom inside of them. And as a coach, I'm going to pull that out. And so I'm going to help them see what are their strengths, what are their gifts, their talents, what's the direction you want to go, how do you want to grow in that direction, what do you need to do, who do you need to reach out to. So often when I'm coaching people, I'm blending those 3 hats because I've got the experience in the sector, because I am a learner and I will never stop learning. I'm always imparting a bit of, hey, you should read this book and I learned this from this. So I do that as well. But the coaching part is really, you are an amazing person. You got to where you are because you have some skills and abilities. Now let's get you to the next step. I don't need to know all the answers as the coach because you already have the answers or you already know where to get them. We'll pull that out of you. Does that explain the difference?
Yes, that's very helpful to delineate between the 3 and how you can really, like you said, blend them. But it's really with coaching, like you said, it's like bringing out that innate brilliance, that innate potential that we have in all of us, just sometimes asking the right questions or giving people permission to do it, right?
And I think one of the other things I'll say about coaching, what I've noticed a lot lately is it's the witnessing of what they're going through. Like you said earlier, Haley, coaching is very lonely, very isolating. And oftentimes we think that we're the only one going through this. And so when I can sit there and listen and acknowledge and remind them they're not the only one, that, sometimes that's where that mentoring hat will come in. I'll be like, man, when I was trying to do that, you and I were talking earlier about having kids. It's just like, oh my God, at the end of the day, when I had to go pick up the kids and I had nothing left in me, I get that. I know what that's like. You're right. And so just that witnessing of what you're going through is sometimes really helpful.
Yeah, and I think, at the end of the day, besides like food, water, and shelter, we all want to be seen, valued, and heard, right? And feel like we belong. And so I think providing that stage to witness someone, to allow them to, that safe space for them to allow to be seen and understood is so important.
Yeah, 100%.
So you talked about, this idea of inner guidance. So let's just start with the basics. Can you explain what is the inner guidance system that you talk about in your book and in the work that you do?
So it's part of what I have now transitioned into the infinite leadership loop. So if you think of an infinity loop, on one side is the inner work that we need to do. On the other side is the exterior connecting with our people that we need to do. And we need to transition back and forth between those all the time. The problem is many of us don't do the inner thinking consciously. So the inner guidance system helps you access that inner wisdom inside you. So the infinite leadership loop, if you think of, like I say, the figure 8, on the right-hand side where we're looking at the inner stuff, it's pause, ponder, pivot, and proceed. And then on the other side is your people. So it's those P's that we go through. So pausing is one thing that we're not very good at in leadership. We are go, go, go. I always say we're whacking moles, right? Like the fire and the crisis and the email and the meeting. And we do that all day. We need to stop and step back and tune in more consciously to what's going on. So pausing, whether that's sitting down to journal or in the middle of a really heated meeting, you just kind of tune in and go, like, what's going on here? And then we're pondering. What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What's happening in my body? What's going on around me? What are the values I want to bring in? Who's the person I'm becoming? Like tuning in more consciously to the type of leader you want to be, the impact you want to have, what's triggering you in this moment, all of that kind of stuff. So pause, ponder. Pivot is when you start shifting your perspectives. Often for me, it was like that victim mode. Oh my God, they hate me. It's all about getting me. And I had to shift and go, okay, what about them? Or, if you're in a conversation and you're sort of thinking to yourself, oh, I hate conflict. I can't handle conflict. That pivot might be, but I'm learning to get through it better. I'm learning some skills. It's not like I'm great at it and I love it suddenly, but that pivot just might be, but I'm learning. I'm getting better. I'm reading a book. I'm like doing something. So pause, ponder, pivot. And then proceed is having the courage to go back into that engagement with people, right? Sometimes, you sit down and you do some self-reflection. You're like, oh yeah, I got to have that talk. Actually scheduling that talk, actually having that talk takes courage. And that's where that proceed really is. It really takes that courage to kind of get back into motion, right? And go out and engage with people. Make sense?
Yeah, I love the alliteration of the pause, ponder, and proceed. And like that it all flows, right? And I think it is so important. And, I talk a lot about in my work as well, like slowing down our emotions, because especially in those times of conflict with Dr. Lil Gershfeld, we talk about how conflict is never about content. It's about that emotional disconnection, and our emotions run fast. And
Yes.
so we have to pause and slow down so that we can think logically in terms of how we want to proceed in our relationship or in our conversation with another person.
Let me give you another example because that's the really important part. It's really all about emotions. I have a membership, and so I have courses inside my membership. And one of the most recent courses was the emotions of time management, because I'm not procrastinating on that conversation because I don't have time. I'm procrastinating on it because I don't think I can handle it. This person's going to trigger me. I don't want to give the hard message. There's a thing there around emotions that is why you're avoiding it. Why do you have this? I wrote an article the other day about this constant open door policy because we're afraid somebody won't like us if we shut the door, right? We're afraid of being seen as not available if the door is shut. It's all about emotions. And so, yeah, I love that you brought that out.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, like setting those boundaries, because I was on a group coaching call the other day and was talking about how I only set meetings on certain days. And they're like, well, I can't do that because I have a client that like won't let me do that. And I was like, to be honest, I've had people turn off from me because somehow it riled them up because they couldn't meet with me on their own, like they had to wait or whatever. But I think, understanding how it would make me feel if I sacrificed that part of me, and the emotions that come up, if I would become resentful if I am at the beg and call of everyone, right? Like setting those boundaries is so important, and understanding too, okay, I'm avoiding this because this is how it makes me feel, or I'm afraid of rejection, or that vulnerability piece is so important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think setting boundaries is a really important thing that we struggle with as leaders. And so the more we can understand what's really underneath that, better we're able to set those boundaries.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, I guess. Let's talk about boundaries, because I think, again, it's kind of like a buzzword, right? Like, I feel like everyone has a different definition. So what is your definition of a boundary?
Yeah. The easy one to talk about is time, right? Like it's boundaries around time. And, when I think about a boundary around time, it is a line in the sand that says, I'm not doing XYZ outside of this time. But it may also be a boundary about when you will or how you will engage with people. And so, if I'm walking to the coffee room and somebody's like, hey, you got a minute for me to answer this question? And the hallway with other people around is not the best place to have a conversation. And maybe you're grabbing coffee because you're going into a call, right? And so it may be setting some boundaries around when you have a challenge, make sure that you're asking me, send me a chat. Do you have time to go to have a conversation? But setting a boundary on how you engage in those conversations. One thing I've often said to people is email is nuts. We just get way too many emails, and have a conversation with your staff around, if you send me an email, I'll respond in 24 hours. If you send me a message on Teams chat, I will respond in an hour. If there's a fire, please phone me. Right? Like I will know that chain of things. And when you communicate that, that's a boundary. Don't expect me to respond to an email in less than 24 hours. And here's the criteria for when you would send an email. Here's the criteria for when it would be a chat. And here's the criteria for when you phone me. And so those are boundaries by just sort of framing and defining the plan of action.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Yeah, I love that. And then I think like leading by example is so important as well, right? Like sticking to those boundaries is really hard to do.
Which comes back to the emotions, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so, I think especially in nonprofit leadership, and maybe I think it applies to everyone, not just women, but we operate in survival mode. And like you were saying, it's a lot of firefighting. We become this reactive out of certain mindsets that we have. And whether it's due to balancing multiple roles and responsibilities without the resources and support, what are some initial steps that leaders can take to shift from this state of survival to a more proactive and empowered leadership stance?
Right. Well, the first step is awareness. I actually have a cheat sheet that goes from survival mode to tolerating to thriving. And it has like definitions under each of those. That first step is just like Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever. You have to recognize where you are and how bad it is. And I think again, you said buzzword. Sometimes we talk about survival mode as a buzzword. But what does that really mean for you? Because when you're in survival mode, it might look different than somebody else. So stepping back to recognize where you're at, gauge how bad it is. And then I think what we want to do is like do this complete opposite. And that's impossible, partly because the sector is the way it is. Like you say, we're under-resourced. But if you can start to move the needle and identify what's the one thing that's just going to start to move me a little bit this direction so that I'm moving closer to thriving, and identify what the things are that move you this way and what moves you back this way, right? So each of us, depending on what you're doing, money may be a trigger. Oh my God, we don't have enough money to do XYZ. Understaffing. Oh no, like the group home's short staffed right now. How do we handle that? What are the things that make you go, oh, and panic? Maybe it's your kids are sick. And what are the things that might move you the other way? Oh yeah, I had lunch break today. That actually settled me down to actually take a lunch break. Brought me, a little bit calmer. I felt more grounded. Or maybe I reached out to somebody else and just talked about being seen and not being so lonely. Oh, that was interesting. I do a couple of sort of community of practices with women leaders. And so once a month, there's a bunch of us that get on a call and just chit chat. Not just chit chat. It's genuine conversation that helps move the needle forward. But what is it for you? If that's something that makes you, if you are a really big learner and you schedule 15 minutes into your week for reading and you're like, after I read, I feel more recharged. Like, what's the thing that's just going to start to move the needle a little bit? and, find some wiggle room and move in baby steps.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, not to make big drastic changes, but those like small steps that then help you to build that confidence or that like idea of, oh, this feels good. Like, I want to do more of this.
Yeah, I talk about them as micro moments. So, micro moments of wellness. I teach a whole course on micro moments of wellness at work because we think of wellness as something that happens after work. And it's not. If we want to be our best selves, we need to take lunch breaks. We need to go to the bathroom. We need to have a drink of water, right? We need to do those things. Take a deep breath before we go into that difficult conversation. Micro moments, things that can happen in less than 3 minutes. You can read an article in less than 3 minutes, right? What are the things that are going to make you feel more engaged and more alive? That's what we want to infuse our day with.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I mean, my whole career in nonprofits, I don't really think I took a lunch break, maybe a handful of times, but maybe it was because I was meeting with a donor or someone related to the nonprofit. Like, stepping away from that desk is so important to reset your mind, because when we get too locked into things, we get stuck in them. And so just taking that break, that 5 minute, 10-minute break, maybe it's a walk around your building if it's in a safe neighborhood, that gets your creative juices flowing and like gets you more energized to then get back engaged in the work that you're doing.
Or 2 minutes to power pose, right? Like, power pose and feel that boost of confidence again. Like, those are things that are so powerful and we forget to do.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening to this is your permission to go
Yes,
to go
yes.
integrate some of those micro moments of wellness. Do you have an example of anyone that you've worked with, that you've coached to go from that idea of survival to tolerating to thriving?
A ton of them. One particular client comes to mind. She came to me when she had just moved into a new leadership position. Things were fairly toxic in the organization. And she really had some triggers with a coworker to the point where she was crying in a meeting and things like that, just falling apart. She had lost her work life balance, and she started just to create those micro moments, like stepping away from the desk, a micro moment of journaling, blocking off 10 minutes in the morning in her calendar to look at her day and see maybe what one meeting do I not need to attend. She started infusing little bits of learning. She loved to learn. So, podcasts. And she just started doing all these little things, nothing dramatic. And she'd come back to coaching and she would learn a new thing. And what we realized, and she started to talk about, is when we start to make changes, our character, who we are, identity, sort of this ideal up here on our ceiling, but we live at our floor. We live at our worst decisions, right? And that's how people judge us. I want to be this person, but when I snap at you, that's how you see me. And her floor started to move up higher, right? She started to feel more confident, be able to handle those difficult conversations. And who she was started to get more aligned with who she wanted to be. And yeah, she just started to shift and make those changes. And the one sort of defining moment for her was when she took holidays and she felt like it was a holiday, not a recharge from work. And she was like, oh my God, like I didn't feel like I had nothing left going into holidays and I could just like veg for, I felt like I had the energy to enjoy my family. And that was the shift for her.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, I've had this experience with myself or my husband where like you go on a vacation from work and you're stressed out, you're burnt out. And it's like you only have like 7 days on the vacation. And it's like the first 4 days, you're just like, oh, I need to breathe. And honestly, before, like my husband used to get sick because it was a time of him then just resting. And his body was like, oh, now I'm going to catch up and like show up because you're actually finally listening to your body and resting. And then it was like, well, he couldn't even really enjoy the vacation because then he would be sick because his body was so stressed out from not having the capacity in his role to take those micro moments for himself.
Yes. The other thing I want to add, because I think the wellness is an important piece, a number of my clients have recognized that going for a run or going for a walk during your workday is work. And it's a powerful, healthy kind of thing, but it frees your mind and they get a lot of decision making done then, a lot of that creative thinking done then. They come back way more grounded. A number of my clients have said to me, oh my God, that the walk or the run was the biggest difference for me. And it's we think of it as like, oh, I have to learn this, crucial conversation skill or something like that. No, it's just taking care of yourself. That's the baseline.
Yeah, I read like a James Clear quote that like most decisions come when like you're in the shower, or like your best ideas come when you're in the shower. So it's not that you need to take more showers throughout the day. It's just you need to take more moments of those pause, more solitude, more turning in to then be able to have those clear visions.
Yes. And again, that's why in the inner guidance cycle, the more intentional you make it, create the space, no call, no phone, right? And then, your mind goes, oh, just like your husband gets sick, then your mind is like, oh, I have time to think now. So I'll think.
Yeah. So, confidence is a critical component of effective leadership. What are some specific techniques or practices you recommend for women to build and sustain their confidence, particularly in environments where they may feel undervalued?
So the challenge for nonprofit leaders is we often move up the ranks from frontline into leadership. Confidence starts with competence. We've never been taught how to lead. We move up the ranks, and you might have a course here or something there. But again, we're not taught the emotional part of leadership. We're not taught the mental load we have to carry as leaders. And so that's the first step, is ensuring you're developing that competence. And honestly, nobody's going to tell you how to do it, or nobody's going to do it for you. I often say that as a leader, you have to create your own personal and professional learning development curriculum. Just like you're in school, create your own syllabus. And that might be podcasts, it might be books, it might be webinars, it might be a course, it might be following your favorite guru, whatever. But what are the things that you need to learn and develop that curriculum? And then, just like I said, if you were in university, you would have a slot for training, like a course. Put that into your calendar. That's part of your leadership development. So competence, and then you have to have the courage to practice. Again, we move up and we think, I should know how to walk into a room and lead a staff meeting. Nobody's taught you how to lead a staff meeting. You've been given an agenda. Running a staff meeting is not an agenda. That's very different, right? Or here's the performance appraisal. Do the performance appraisal on all your staff. I don't know how to do that, right? And so you have to have the courage to fumble your way through it and practice and ask other people. So competence, courage, and then confidence is developed with our thoughts. Confidence is what we think we can do, not what somebody else says we can do. And that's often where that imposter syndrome comes in. Oh, I don't know how to have tough conversations, or, oh, everybody's better than me. That I was talking to Mallory Erickson on a podcast a couple of years ago, and we were talking about not enoughness. And we all have that. I don't have enough education. I'm not old enough. I don't have the experience. I haven't worked in the sector. I mean, whatever it is, we have this not enoughness. So we have to start training our mind to believe in ourselves. That's that inner wisdom and that inner guidance. So that's kind of the long path. The short path to confidence, we just talked about power pose for 2 minutes, right? Feel it in your body, and then take that deep breath. Like if we learn to just, take 2 or 3 deep breaths before we go into a meeting or sit down, and there's tons of apps that do like 2 or 3 or 5 minute meditations, some of them specifically on confidence. If we just do that sort of slowing down, we'll feel the confidence emerge again.
Hey there, podcast family. If you're like me and deeply committed to improving your leadership skills and fostering better connections with your team, I've got something truly amazing to share with you. I'm proud to introduce the EMC Masterclass, something I talk about often as a certified trainer. It's an incredible program developed by the renowned Dr. Lola Gershfeld, an organizational psychologist and corporate emotional connection expert. You might remember her from a podcast episode where she shared invaluable insights into the world of emotional connection. Dr. Gershfeld's EMC Leaders courses are designed for anyone working with people, whether you're a manager, supervisor, team leader, educator, coach, mentor, or a team member. This program is truly for everyone looking to enhance their communication and collaboration skills to raise more revenue for their mission. Now, let me tell you why the EMC Masterclass is a game changer. Dr. Gershfeld's groundbreaking emotional connection process has been integrated into top universities' curriculum and recognized by international organizations like ICF, HRCI, and SHRM. Humans are wired to seek emotional safety And when we feel safe, we're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. The EMC process is the catalyst for creating that emotional safety within your team. The virtual EMC masterclass consists of 8 modules with 4 hours of expertly recorded material, 13 quizzes to reinforce your learning, and a workbook filled with activities for offline practice and something I still refer to daily. Ready to become an emotional connection master? Dr. Gershfield is offering an exclusive detail for our podcast listeners. Use the code LEADWITHHEART to enjoy a generous 10% discount on the EMC Masterclass. Head over to emcleaders.com and enroll in the EMC Masterclass today. Yeah, I love that idea of confidence is competence and like how you frame that. And, I think there are a lot of leadership development options out there, right? Like I've done a bunch of them. And I love that you said, like, you have to create your own curriculum because in the nonprofits, like, there just really isn't that opportunity. You have to invest in yourself because no one else is going to invest in you, right? Like, you would hope they would. And so, do you have any specific leadership development resources that you recommend to your coaching clients?
Well, so for starters, as I said, I have my own membership and I'm always sending people there because I teach some of that stuff. And I think that's part of why we have to create our own curriculum. You may be fine doing public speaking. That may be something I struggle with. You may be okay with conflict, the next person maybe not so much. And so you have to figure out what your thing is. I'm often recommending books and podcasts and tons of resources. I do the Gallup survey with people. So I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I always get people to identify your strengths. So there's the Gallup strengths, which are your talent strengths. And then VIA character strengths are your character strengths. The VIA is free. The Gallup is under $100. And there are tons of other assessments out there. But start to look at who am I, right? Like, what are the things that I am good at, where the strengths I have? And then look at what do I need to learn? What are the gaps? And so assessments is the first thing. I'm often saying, like you said, there are tons of podcasts out there and books and resources. Brene Brown's is the one that most people refer to. And I think that's really good. But if you look at some of those people, like you do podcasts with interviewed people, go to those people that they're interviewing and see which ones you like and start to research their work. Brene Brown interviewed Priya Parker. She talks about the art of gathering and how to create meetings and spaces and conferences. And so if that's something you do a lot of, then you might want to follow Priya's work, right? If you love Simon Sinek, go follow Simon Sinek. If your thing is, Patrick Lencioni, and go do that. What I struggle is, as women leaders, the majority of people that have written on leadership and teach on leadership in the last hundreds of years are men. It's hard to find books written by women leaders. And so stretch out of that. The other thing I will say is don't just look for leadership books. Look for books in a bunch of different sectors. So one of my strengths is spirituality. So I will read a lot of books in the spirituality space, and that comes into the way I lead. If you like history, go look at women in history, right? And read some of the stories of what brought them through and how they learned. There's, the time management and productivity gurus out there. If that's your thing, whatever your thing is. And that's why I say personal and professional learning curriculum. Leadership isn't a skill. It's about who you are and it's how you show up. And so it's the personal development that needs to be done as much as the professional development.
Yeah, I think that's so important in how you framed how people can then define their own curriculum and go about it. Because there are so many resources out there, but it is what's unique to you. And like you said, it's both personal and professional in the way that we want to show up in the world. So I think also you mentioned a little bit earlier about this idea of imposter syndrome and, this idea of self-doubt is something that, I've dealt with a lot in my career. And I know that I'm not alone, especially in aspiring female leaders. So how can women leverage their inner guidance system to navigate and overcome self-doubt?
Write it down. Lots of people hate journaling. And so don't call it journaling, but it's one of the key ways to start taking what's in your head and taking it out of your head and looking at it more objectively. So when you write down your thoughts And again, it doesn't have to be Dear Diary. It doesn't even have to be in a journal. You can write it on a scrap piece of paper. And then you look at those thoughts. I'm not good at conflict. Like, is that true? Do I want it to be true? What would a different thought be? And again, move through shades of emotions rather than go, oh, I love conflict. No, like you're not going to get there that quickly and it's impossible. So start to go, what's the next step? I'm curious. Curiosity is like the best emotion to shift to. I'm curious about how I might learn more about conflict. I'm curious what might help me get more confident dealing with conflict. I'm curious about who I could ask about, right? And start to shift that. Or I'm learning about conflict. I'm discovering more. I'm becoming more confident the more times I do it. And so when we start to shift from the one thought to the next, but writing it out helps sort of take it out of your head and see it so that you can reframe it.
That's good. I like that. Because sometimes when you write it down, you're like, oh, maybe this isn't the thought that I want to have, but it's so ingrained in us that we don't know anywhere different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question I had was like, do you have advice for women trusting their intuition and in their decision-making process?
As women, again, we've been taught to lead through sort of a male framework, which often sort of is, don't bring your emotions into the boardroom. Your emotions don't belong. And so we've been taught to suppress our emotions or tune them out. And we tune out everything. We tune out when we have to go to the bathroom. We tune out when we're hungry. We tune out when we needed a break, right? We just don't pay attention, which is why the pause is so darn important. You need to pause. Like you actually have to schedule those pauses in so that you step back and tune in. And then once you tune in, you can really start to tune into what's going on in your mind and pay attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think also that helps to build your confidence as well. And that like trust within yourself, that when you start to pause, when you start to then make those decisions out of that place, you get more confident because you see that you're trusting yourself to make those right decisions or try or take a risk, right? And sometimes maybe you'll fail, but at least it's a learning and growth opportunity that'll help, again, build that self-confidence.
Well, and what I've noticed for a lot of people, and again, back to strengths, some people are really good at making decisions from their head, right? Other people, and we go back to the emotions, we're pleasers, we're performers, we're perfecters. And so we get into all this, I don't know if everybody's going to be happy. And so if we can just kind of step back and go, what does my gut say? What does my heart say? And then go into those other things, then you can come back and say, okay, but what did my gut say, right? I was talking to somebody yesterday and she knows it's time to leave. She's way past the point she should be leaving her organization. She's kind of one of the founders, right? But she's hanging on and she's hanging on and she's hanging on. And her gut says it's time to leave, but her head keeps getting in the way. And, it's what does your gut say? And just circling back to it again and again and again and learning to trust that. And going back to times where you have trusted your gut. I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking about the fires before we started, in our province right now, big forest fires, cities are being evacuated. And I was talking to a leader yesterday who didn't need to evacuate, but chose to. She wasn't quite in the zone. And I said, what made you make that decision? She said, I just tuned into my kids. I just knew my kids needed to get out of here. She just trusted her gut, right? And we were doing a book club call for Mastering Confidence. And she actually joined the call. And I'm like, you're sitting in a trailer like 12, 13 hours from home with kids and dogs. And, you're still doing your thing. But you trusted your gut to leave that community. And that's what we got to do.
Yeah, definitely. So you are writing a new book. Obviously, you've written your book, Mastering Confidence with Your Inner Guidance System. Do you want to tell me a little bit more and our listeners a little bit more about your new book and what it's all about?
Absolutely. I'll read you the title. I can't say it because I haven't memorized it and it's long, or the subtitle's long. And that will give you a good indication for starters. So it's Character-Driven Leadership for Women, a 5-step guide to shape your own nonprofit management style with strong values, ethics, and morals. So it's for women leaders in the nonprofit sector. And it really is about developing that integrity in how we lead, developing our character. We're not in this profession for the money, let's be honest. We're in it because we care and our heart is in it. And so there are times that we feel icky, and it's because we're not walking our talk or something doesn't feel quite aligned. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were talking, her board said, well, you need to let that person go. She's like, no, like I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. But they didn't have the whole story. And ethically, morally, she couldn't let that person go in that way that they wanted her to. And I think that's part of what it is. And again, this comes back to we haven't been taught how to lead from our values. We haven't been taught to lead with our emotions. We haven't been taught to lead from character strengths. Like when you think about, all those years that I've done leadership, has anybody ever said to you, what are your morals? What are your ethics? What are your standards? What values do you make decisions by? How do you use your intuition to guide you? Has anybody ever asked you those questions? But they all come into play, right? So that's what it's about.
Oh, I love that. And I can't wait to read it because I think that's so important that you, like you said, to lead from that values-driven place and out of that place of integrity. And that, even your client the other day was able to see that delineation between what she felt was right in this decision, between what the board was saying out of that ethical, moral integrity. And I think that's so important for most of us to read. So we'll link it in the show notes once it's out, or people can pre-order it so that they can instill that into their own business and mindset and personal leadership as well. So Kathy, where can people find you to learn more about your work?
Kathy Archer, Kathy with a K.com is my website. You'll find me there. And if you are Instagram or anywhere else, LinkedIn, it's Kathy D. Archer on all of the socials.
Well, thank you so much for being here, for saying yes to being on the podcast. And it's just been such a joy.
Thank you so much for having me, Haley.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.